Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Joel and Adam. And today we're talking about Broken Oath, a 1977 film directed by Zhang Chenghua and starring Angela Mao. She plays the angry and aggressive orphan Lotus Lin, who gets raised as a Buddhist in a Shaolin temple after her mother dies in the wake of giving birth to her in prison. Consumed with rage, Lin gets expelled from the temple and decides to extract a harsh revenge on the four men who killed her father and sent her mother to jail. It's basically a remake of Lady Snowblood, but it really goes off in its own direction. And that was largely the IMDb breakdown. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add to it before we get into the discussion, or do you think that adequately covers the premise?
That's the premise. Yeah, I would say definitely the scope definitely changes enormously from Lady Snowblood, but the premise is identical.
So I guess what's everybody's reaction to this movie?
I didn't realize it was based on Lady Snowblood until after I watched it, and I was like, wow, why does this seem so familiar? That was my first reaction, is that intro is Lady Snowblood, and I read that manga, 15 years ago, and it left a big impression. It's a heck of a story, right? And it's got a very memorable premise, and so like watching this, I was like, wow, she's pregnant and in prison and having the kid and dying. Oh, wait. Is this just like, I didn't know if maybe like there was an older folk tale or something that this was all drawing off of or something. No, apparently it's just drawing off Lady Snowblood, so it's interesting.
Did you like it? Did you like the
movie?
I
loved it. This movie was great, dude. It's got a really great blend of a lot of different elements. I find the best wuxia does, because it's got really good performances, which is great, like memorable performances. And they're not just good; they stick out in your mind. It's got cool weapons like the scorpions, which I think we'll get into eventually. I think those are a fun weapon that get used a lot. It's got a lot of interesting surprise twists. It diverges, like I said, from Lady Snowblood, so it's got other stuff it does. So I haven't just seen this before, so that's really cool. Let's see, the fight scenes are great. I think that we're gonna have to get into those too.
Yeah, we'll do those on their own.
They deserve their own little. They deserve their own little thing. So the fight scenes are good. The story's compelling, and like every great wuxia film, it keeps going for the whole runtime. I was in like the last 3 minutes, and I'm like, oh god, they're still going. This is like classic wuxia energy. So yeah, I hearty recommendation on this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'd obviously recommend it too. I don't know if I want to add anything beyond that because I don't want to just have it be. I think a lot of times we just kind of give our breakdowns, but maybe we should. If Joel said everything that we all agree with, I think we can move on.
I agree with everything Joel said. And I'll just add, I'm coming from the standpoint of someone that's seen the movie Snowblood, but I haven't read the manga, and it's interesting because it's been a long time since I've seen Lady Snowblood, but I could tell. Even though I'm vague on the memories there, I could tell it diverged a lot from the original once you get past the setup.
Well, I guess we could talk about, and Joel, you haven't seen the Lady Snowblood, the movie, or have you?
No, I've only read the manga. I didn't even know it was a movie.
Yeah, the movie is really, in my opinion, the movie's better than the manga. But maybe you'd have a different opinion because I know you're more of a manga fan. But it's like an artful revenge movie that's just perfect. There's nothing wrong with Lady Snowblood, and if you're comparing them, Lady Snowblood is definitely the more well-crafted movie. Like I'm not gonna, there's no comparison between these two movies. But this movie rises on its own in its own way, and so it's they're doing two different things, and so you see that most clearly in the prison scene where in Lady Snowblood it's like super dramatic. It's shot in this really bizarre way. It's just a whole different style of filmmaking, and this just follows a much more sort of traditional wuxia movie approach. So they're a little bit more clear, I think, in this movie, and then when they actually get to the point when she leaves the prison, the point where it really diverges is, if I recall, in Lady Snowblood, she goes and she lives with like male monks, and in this movie, she goes to like a nunnery, basically, like they're all Shaolin nuns or something in this film. And so I feel like from that point on, the whole movie is different, unless, I don't know, maybe you guys feel differently. But I feel like once you're out of the prison and she's
Yeah,
the
they start
nuns.
diverging right away. Well, first of
I
all,
pick no plot points up at all. Like I said, my memories of Lady Snowblood are
Yeah.
vague, but I couldn't find
I
any
mean, there's a
parallels.
brothel in both, but the brothel scene is totally different, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's a yeah.
yeah,
So there's some, she gets stabbed at the end, and Lady Snowblood gets stabbed at the end, but there's no scene of her clutching in the. There's no snow in this movie, right? Like there's
right.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
that's it's a pretty big deal
Don't
'cause the
wanted
snow
to
is
avoid
very
copyright.
important.
If we don't use any snow, we can't be accused of ripping it off.
But but yeah, they're very different. I quite like the way that they introduce her character at the nunnery, where
Mm-hmm.
she's basically the handmaiden brings her there and becomes her auntie for all intents and purposes, and gives her the nuns. And the nuns she's like, look, I don't. Her mom wants her to go on this revenge path, but I don't want that because it's just going to bring her
That
misery. And
Yeah, that wasn't part of Lady Snowblood, was it? That having
no,
her.
no, Lady
Yeah, I
Snowblood was
say
she was
I,
being
I
raised from an early age to get this revenge.
Yeah,
I
And
very
really I
specifically.
really like that even though she didn't know, there was this karmic energy
yeah,
around her for vengeance that just that was a really nice original touch in this movie
yeah,
because she had the
Yeah, agreed.
killing aura, to put it in
yeah.
more terms.
Yeah, she gets kicked out. They kick her out of the temple because she kills some bad. The bandits are doing something bad, but like she's
Yeah.
obviously enjoying the opportunity to kill them too,
Hmm.
and she's toying with them, and so she gets kicked out. So it is like a very interesting difference, and I agree with you. The whole she's got this like storm inside of her that is just
Yeah.
um,
Oh, that was a nice touch.
Well, yeah, it makes her a very different character. Lady Snowblood's a very focused character. Like she's basically an assassin that's just like they've developed her whole body into a bullet to shoot these four individual people, right? But
Hmm.
like this character is very different. Like you said, the storm, that kind of that chaos inside of her, and it comes out like whenever she gets trapped in her first assassination attempt, and like she immediately, oh, there's a truck passing. Thanks, guys. But like she immediately like you see her put on this like sadistic mask when she's taunting the
yeah.
guy like, are you sure I'm gonna starve to death in here? Are you certain of that?
Yeah.
It's a very different kind of character.
Well,
She,
I
she
like the way she could flip from like being like seductive or something to being super fierce or something. There was really great like flips
Yeah.
in her demeanor whenever it was
Yeah, it's
called.
really it stands out in your mind, like I was saying. Like it's a
Yeah,
character like she's memorable and distinct from Lady Snowblood. And I like that. That's really good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they did a
No, this
good
did not
job.
feel this did
Oh, go
not feel
ahead.
like a ripoff of Lady Snowblood at all. It's
No.
inspired by it clearly, but
There were some cool costume changes as a result of all that stuff too, because she goes to
Yeah.
the brothel and she's dressed in like that brothel attire, and it looks
Mhm.
really cool when she's fighting open-handed like that. It just works. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then like like and throughout the movie, she's dressed differently depending on what's going on.
Hmm.
But yeah, I thought her performance was great, and Angela Mao is somebody who a lot of times with Angela Mao, she's one of these people who's a great performer, but she's not always in the best movies. So when you
Hmm.
see her in a movie like this, or I think Hapkido was the other one that was really good. There's a couple that are like much higher level than some of the other movies she's in. It's really great because she's got like a good supporting cast. There's really good fight choreography. It's well shot, and all the things that are needed to make the movie entertaining. And sometimes because she's in movies that are lower quality, the fight choreography is not as good. You don't get to see as much of her talent as a result. And so here I feel like you really get to see her talent. Especially like again, her thing is she comes from a Hapkido Taekwondo background, I think, and you can really see that in her kicking, like the kicking that she does. But in this movie, she's using all kinds of weaponry,
Yep.
primarily that staff, right? But it
Hmm.
comes apart, and this is, I think, the Lady Snowblood connection. Lady Snowblood had an umbrella with a blade in it, and she has a staff, and when she pulls it apart, it's two blades. And so, I thought that was like I don't know, I like that.
Well, she
Like,
goes Darth Maul on a bunch of like goons at the very close to the last part of this movie, and like, yeah, it's
Hmm.
great. It's really satisfying because they do it in stages, right? Where they give her the staff and she attacks somebody, then she takes one of the things off and it's a blade. She
yeah.
stabs somebody, takes the other thing off, and now it's two blades, and then she just goes to town on them. It's brilliant.
No, it's really cool. And she's got the scorpions. The scorpions, I think, are I don't know. Those were a nice touch. and I like the way that she would deposit them on people with her scarf. She just kind of would like run her scarf over you, and there'd be a scorpion on your neck.
Well, I also like that she has like a godmother who's a pickpocket, but not a martial artist.
Yeah.
And they use the pickpocketing a lot in the movie as a thing to like, as an aspect of the character and to move the plot along and a bunch of other stuff. And she has a lot of sleight of hand moves that she uses to beat people. I like that.
No,
it all goes together nicely.
Her godmother's name is Thousand Hands, right? She's the no, I thought that was kind of a cool, which also, she was her godmother came from the prison, so it makes sense, but well, that's the other thing about this movie is because of those scenes involving the sleight of hand and the thievery, her character is definitely more playful than Lady Snowblood. Kind of like you were saying.
Yeah.
Lady Snowblood is like you said, like laser focused on the revenge. I think at one point in the movie, Lady Snowblood had like this time for romance, right? But it wasn't like she was this character that is able to sort of arrive at peace the way that the Angela Mao character can. So I think she's like we said before, she's sort of got this storm inside of her, this karmic urge to get revenge that she isn't even fully aware of until she finds out all the details. But she can be playful. She doesn't seem to be always hell-bent on revenge. So there's a few more dimensions to the character, maybe.
And she certainly takes a delight in mating out justice, right? Which I don't feel like Lady Snowblood that was ever happy.
No, I think she was a stoic killer, Lady Snowblood, and the character in this, what's her character's name? Lotus. Or
Flawless Lotus or something like that. I think it depends on the
I forget. Yes, I forget what the full
works.
name was, but she's Lotus, and she I don't know, it just worked.
Well, and I like the term Lotus as being something that means both enlightenment, but is also like the vector for a lot of poison. Lotus is like the what is it, isn't there like a black lotus or something like that that's like super poisonous? I love that, and it reveals that there's like beauty to the character and danger to the character, but also like the potential for something transcendent in the character, and that's all well portrayed. Like it actually makes it to the screen, which is wonderful.
Well, and I think she was called Lotus for a Buddhist reason, if I remember right, because they said she was like innocent or something, but
the nunnery that names her.
Right, but a Buddhist saying, like, naming somebody Lotus and a poisoner naming somebody Lotus, very different.
Very different.
And her nature is such that like it encompasses all of it, and that's really cool. It's cool to have a character with that kind of complexity and depth. You really follow her, you sort of triumph when she triumphs. It makes it a fun movie to watch, very watchable in that regard.
And the big evil in this one, there's a few evils, but the big evil is Zhao Chai, the guy with the played by Michael Chan. He's got like the large basket hat on, the sort of conical hat, and
the dark helmet, yeah.
Well, and initially it's him and four guys. Well, him and three other guys, and they all dress like that. So they look kind of like if people have seen Big Trouble Little China. It's that kind of presentation.
Yeah.
And it looks really cool. Like they stroll up and they murder her father, the general, and then her mother gets abducted. And then when her mother doesn't submit to the whims of I forget the name of the guy. Is it Hao? Is Hao the guy who abducted her?
I don't remember his name. I remember his golden eye.
He's the one with the golden.
Yeah, that's Hao.
Yeah, because she stabs him in the eye when he tries to rape her, and then he.
Oh, that was such a satisfying stab too, because he's just clutching his eye and there's blood spurting everywhere.
Like, and I like that he's using a coin, even though it's not that good of an item because it's a hole in the middle of it. So you could, but it worked.
It kind of makes it seem like an eye, though, which I think there's something to that.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Well,
what I was thinking of is you can see the guy's actual eye. I think under the thing.
Well, it's probably just maybe the eye didn't fall completely out when it got stabbed.
Just
maybe
got blinded.
Yeah. Well, also these movies were never meant for HD, so there's also that.
No.
Yeah.
but I thought that that the Zhao Chai character was a very terrifying villain.
Well, he's got such a physical presence to him, you know?
Mm-hmm.
The guy stands like Max Schrank.
He's got this lean physique, and so his arms are always out at his side, and it just looks. You wouldn't think it's imposing, but it really is, because he's got that like I'm like this like old master energy where I don't need muscles. I just am this
Well, and
like
he's
wiry,
really,
lethal
he's
killing
tall and
machine.
he's lean and he's long and like he moves like lightning too. I love one of the things I really like about this movie is in the fight scenes, you can tell someone's level of mastery by the physical performance of the actor.
Yeah.
You know, some of them have like what has to be an affectation of like clumsiness or slowness or awkwardness in their moves, and then others have this incredible like dexterity to the way that they move, like, really impressive stuff. And like it's all acting and it's physical acting and it's incredibly convincing. Like it shows up on the camera beautifully. So it makes it really, again, it's a delight to watch these things because you have like these tiers of mastery where like these kung fu goons are like clumsily swiping at these like quick moving like super skilled masters, and then you have the masters that are the tier above them. It's really cool. It's really cool to watch.
Well, and you have Yuan Wu-ping is the action director. He's one of the two action directors in the movie, and so it really, this is obviously earlier in his career, but it's really good fight sequences. Like you have a scene where a guy blows up, right? Like just this crazy, because he's I forget his name, but one of the guards uses fire to finish people off. And somebody ends up throwing the gourd back at him or something, and he just blows up. And it's just
it's nice. He knocks the gourd out of his hand earlier in the scene, so it's just kind of hanging there. And later in the scene, he's in this position to pick it up and
Chekhov's gourd.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love the fire guy.
That section again. Actually.
Yeah, fire guy makes this movie, dude. What a great goon. What a great mini boss. And like.
I mean, on the choreography too, it's just so well coordinated with the camera work. So many things where you'll see a shot coming at the camera and the camera angle will reverse to seeing the person flying back, stuff like that. I think everything is really well set up.
I might be confusing my movies, but I think Vengeful Beauty had a similar final scene, but I really liked the scene with the mask where you don't know which one is the general. And they're because all of his guards are wearing identical clothing and masks, and so he's got. I'm pretty sure it was Vengeful Beauty. It might be another film, but there was, or was it the Jade Raksha? I can't remember now. There's a character.
I don't think it was Jade Raksha.
It must have been Vengeful Beauty.
I haven't seen Vengeful Beauty, so it's got to be that.
I'm pretty sure it's a movie where Lolier plays a bad guy and he's wearing a mask, and a bunch of other guys are wearing a mask, but it's like a different. I think instead of them wearing like an actual mask, if I recall, they're wearing masks of his face, so you just can't tell which one is which. I could be wrong, but there's another scene kind of like this one. Is my point, and obviously anyone listening, if you remember the movie, definitely mention it in the comments. And I'll try to check Vengeful Beauty after and see if that's the one I'm thinking of. But I just thought that was a beautiful scene because you got this guy with the mask, and they kind of all fan out, and it just looks really cool.
That's a cool moment too when they fan out like that.
And also it takes place in an underground layer, and I always like when you don't think of it because they move from place to place, but I mean they're doing that with a purpose. And so like the fight starts out in the guy's like reception hall or something, and then he ducks down a path through this cavern, and they come to this underground complex, and I don't know, I like when they kind of have
another Wuxia dungeon to add to. I thought that as soon as he ran past, opened the bookshelf and ran down into the cave, I'm like, here we go, Wuxia dungeons again.
People never notice the Wuxia dungeons, but they're all over the place,
I know.
So,
I know.
The only reason why I would emphasize that is because people used to say dungeons don't belong in Wuxia when they would talk about Wuxia, and so that's why I would hammer on about that.
Clearly have never seen a really good fight scene in a Wuxia dungeon.
No, they've seen them. I think what happens is people just don't notice. They don't even pay attention to the fact that there's a dungeon in the background that is
so
just as much a part of the setting as just like they don't notice, they're always in tea houses and inns, and like those are also sort of staples of
and again they're kind of dungeons. You can kind of
but I, but yeah, that final scene I thought was great. And I don't know. I'm also kind of happy. Like obviously, Lady Snowblood doesn't die because there's a part two. But at the end of Lady
Hmm.
Snowblood, you don't know if she lives because she's on the ground, clutching her stomach and clutching the ice, and it looks like
Yeah,
she might die. And they're playing her theme
yeah.
music, so you don't know what's going to happen. My only the only thing that I would have liked to have seen, since this is a Lady Snowblood remake, is stronger theme music. I feel like that was something that this movie could have used.
Mm. I
Um,
don't remember any music, so
that's
that
my
I guess
point.
you're right.
That's my
Yeah.
Yeah.
point. The music in this movie, which on the one hand it's a good thing because it means this movie is not carried by the music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, but on the downside, if this movie had like an incredible soundtrack, like Last
Hmm.
Hurrah for Chivalry or something, it
Yeah.
would have been amazing.
Well, the
So
very first thing you hear in the movie is this really like jarringly bright and upbeat music
yeah,
that plays. That really caught my attention because immediately it was just like, so, geez, okay, I guess we're doing that. And that's the only music I remember in the whole film. So yeah,
yeah, with the painting
yeah,
overlay.
yeah, the
Yeah,
painting.
it's like a
Yeah.
rotoscope type thing, I think.
It's definitely a
But
memorable opening. I don't know if it's necessarily fitting, but it's memorable.
it doesn't feel like it's, I mean, maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe the music, just lands differently. But to me, it didn't feel like it set the tone of the
Hmm.
movie
No, not
that
at
well.
all. I thought it was going to
Um,
be way more
whereas,
lighthearted, and then immediately there's a mother dying in prison. It's like, oh,
but with Lady Snowblood, that theme hits, and it's like you're on board the moment the music starts. You know what I mean? And so I think it would have been nice if it had something like that.
So I watched the extended version, and you guys watched the
ooh,
normal version. You said immediately there's
oh.
a one. So did you have the whole journey to the island and everything on the boat? And
Yeah, they were on a
or
boat. It wasn't that
okay,
long of a
okay. I was just
trip.
A
checking.
little
I,
bit.
I, I'm just kind of curious about what I saw that you didn't see, because so
No,
far
no, no.
nothing you've talked about is something that.
And again, I think me and Adam, we both have the Eureka Blu-ray. Is that right? And I watched the
Yes, the
theatrical
Eureka.
version
Yes.
because the thing is, I wanted to do. My wife was home yesterday when I was watching it. And I didn't want to annoy her by having, Mandarin going on in the background.
Sure.
So I thought if I had it in English, it would be less like confusing to her from the other room when she's doing whatever she was doing. And so I watched the dubbed. The dub version was the theatrical version, and so my plan is I'm going to watch the extended release sometime later.
Yeah,
Maybe
I wanted to watch the Mandarin, but they only have the dub version on Hiya, which is where I was watching it.
I mean,
I
the
was
dub version. There are a
It's
couple
fine.
of like it's a dub version, so you have all the dub.
It's a
this
it's a
feature- yeah,
70s wuxia dub, so
yeah.
for the most part it's fine and I can just kind of ignore it. But every once in a while, someone is doing a voice. Yeah, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, come on.
There
take me
was
away.
one guy who did the yeah thing.
Yeah, yeah.
in,
It's
in
like,
one of the
oh my
scenes,
g-
so
come
that
on.
kind of stood out. But I kind of like the dubs because that's what I grew up watching, and then
Well, same.
later in life, I remember like still watching the cheap dubs, and I just had like I don't know, I have an affinity for them. But a lot of people do prefer the subtitles with like the original languages, and so
Yeah,
um,
generally I'm a subtitle guy, but like you have something about the dubs, like unexpected comedic fun. They do add a little something, So it's not like they're worthless or they just detract from the movie because that voice is gonna wind up as an NPC in one of my
there's
games at one point. Yeah, where are you guys going? This
if
there.
anybody's ever seen Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, that's the predecessor to the Drunken Master, and it stars Jackie Chan. It's a Yuan Wu Ping movie, and it's a really good movie. It used to be one of my favorite movies because it was one of the only martial arts movies I had on DVD, and so I'd watch it like back when your collection was small, you would watch the movie 30 times or however many
Mhm.
times. And there's
Or if you have whatever
and
variety of autism I have.
well, and then and I think that one was dub only. I can't remember, but I remember that watching the dub version. There's this one scene where there's a priest throughout the movie who's you just think he's a priest, and then it turns out he's secretly a fighter from Russia. And the way it happens in the dubs, he's like, I'm a fighter from Russia, and it just has like this super dubby effect, But it made the movie more because when I watch it with the subs, it's like, that scene kind of loses something without the
Without the fighter
without the
from
tone.
Russia.
Yeah. So I don't even remember if it's the same dialogue in the subs, but it loses something. So I have a soft spot for it. But the other reason I like the dubs is my eyes aren't what they used to be. I have a cataract on one eye and all this stuff, and so it's really hard for me to read while I'm watching the action. So I like to, with the dubs, I can focus entirely on watching the action and not lose what's going on. So that's the other big advantage. Is it's fundamentally these are action movies, and so I'd rather not miss any of the action. But yeah, so I don't know what else do we want to discuss. I know that Adam, you had some points about the trailer that you said you wanted.
Oh yeah, tell us about the trailer, Adam.
Yeah, the trailer is funny just because it's trying to make it, there are exploitive kind of touches to this movie, but the trailer really wants to hammer that down. It's like it's all text, like there's no narrator. There's kind of text on the screen throughout it. And it's like going on, it's like, she's cast out of a Buddhist temple, and then it shows being cast. Then and she sells herself to a brothel, and then they have the dialogue from the movie, but they like switch it around. So it's like the guy comes over, it's like, is this girl selling herself? And then they have the stepmother have a quote of her saying, yes.
Yes.
It's just like, oh man, you're really this is
Really into that aspect.
I think my suspicion is I'd be curious when I see the extended cut, but I have a feeling the international cut leans a little more into the exploitation, and that the trailer naturally would do so. Because
this is a Hong Kong trailer actually. I was reading subtitles. The words were actually, in the original language, and there were subtitles added to if I remember correctly. So I think
that's interesting. So this is the trailer that comes on the Blu-ray with Eureka, by the way, which I guess is the original trailer. But the woman that was in Lady Snowblood, she was also in a bunch of prison movies, like women in prison type movies, and so I would imagine that they, that when they decided to do a Lady Snowblood, they might have been thinking we're gonna get that exploitation market. But the funny thing is, this movie, even though it has like on paper, it's got like the exploitation elements, it doesn't feel like an exploitation movie at all. It does, because it
does a little in the beginning, at least in the cut I saw, but it doesn't. Then it just completely moves away from that completely.
And I think. Yeah, but, I think that scene from the beginning that you're thinking of, so in the version I saw, you mentioned that there's like a beating scene in the prison.
I don't think scene, and she's like her pants are pulled down and that kind of.
Was there a caning scene in the one you saw, Joel?
No, I didn't see a caning.
Yeah, I didn't see a caning scene either, so that must be one of the elements. And there's that. And there's but it's all like within the first 10 minutes. Anything that feels like an exploitation movie, and then after that, it's pretty standard.
Just pretty much wuxia at that point.
Because she enters a brothel, ends up still looking like an innocent, pure person. Like it doesn't.
There's nothing prurient in those brothel scenes at all, from what I recall.
No, and all of that was like just a ploy to get close to that guy to kill him. Like it's nothing to do with there's no prurient aspect whatsoever. Also, excellent use of the term prurient. I wonder what percentage of our audience is like just getting out their dictionaries like, all right.
People must know. I mean, people who don't use that word must at least know what it means when they.
Well, I mean, we're using it contextually, so use the context clues, folks.
But yeah, and also the most that she really does is flirt with her eyes. Like that's really the extent of the mother does more, but that's earlier in the movie, like Adam was saying, and it's still and she still comes out it doesn't feel exploitive because really she ends up stabbing the guy in the eye and nothing really happens to her.
That's the soul penetration in that scene.
So, I also like that. I like that background for that character. I like that we have this character with an eye patch and it's explained in that scene in that way. But what did you think of the revenge plot? Because I guess that is sort of the core of the movie. Did it work for you?
I don't know. Like Lady Snowblood's revenge plot was almost archetypical. Like I don't want to call it perfect, but like when you do a revenge plot, when you do your Kill Bills and what have you nowadays, that's kind of where you go. right? Is
Yeah.
Lady Snowblood. This one, it's different, right? Like that's important to that character, but in terms of it being important to us as the viewer and the plot, it's mostly a vehicle just to get us to the next part of the plot.
Yeah.
Where the scope is getting bigger and bigger the whole time, and there's more and more characters getting added in to complicate it. So I would say it was functional, but not necessarily as compelling.
Yeah, it doesn't have, there's like an emotional payoff that a lot of revenge movies have that this one doesn't. It's not, and the payoff isn't the revenge itself. It's like the toll it takes on the character. There's like, I can think of like a million wuxia movies I've seen where the character's like disarrayed in a courtyard with blood everywhere. And there's like a feeling of, whoa, like something just happened. And you don't quite have that feeling at the end of this. It feels all justified and like nobody came out the other end of it broken. I mean, they were wounded, people died, but there's no she didn't pay any kind of toll by the end of it, if that
because it wasn't like revenge for the demonic, like my karma is corrupted by hatred kind of reason. She's like dealing out justice to evil people who are gonna just do greater evil.
It just throws in the whole thing with like the villains are plotting to overthrow the emperor, and then you've got the imperial spies that are infiltrating their organization, and it's things that they're not bad, but it does detract from the focus of the revenge story.
It makes it a great wuxia movie or a great martial arts movie, but it does detract from the revenge element because it's got like all of the wuxia stuff in there with like there's the general plotting the secret revenge, and then there's like you said, like all the guys that are planted, and
as a guy that runs wuxia sandbox games, I was like, this is all good stuff to throw into your wuxia sandbox that the players can stumble into. It's just but it does take away from focus, but it's fine.
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point. It changes the focus, but whether or not that's a good or a bad thing is 100% up to your taste. It's just different, you know.
Well, Lady Snowblood did the pure vengeance thing so perfectly that if they were literally trying to do Lady Snowblood again, I think that would have been hard to measure up to that.
I think they would.
By going in a different direction, it became its own thing.
Well, they ultimately are making a character who's likable, I think. And Lady Snowblood's a lot of things, but she's not like a likable personality. Like that's not like her thing. And so I think that it would have the movie would have lost something if it tried, because it wouldn't have been able to equal Lady Snowblood anyway.
No.
But it also would have lost all of the charm that it had.
Angela Mao was very charming in this movie. I was really, really impressed with her in this.
But yeah, this is one I've always really liked this movie. I don't see it that much though. So like I saw it ages ago, and then I saw that they had a new version of it available, and so I was like, I better get that, because the thing that's been deterring me from breaking out Broken Oath is the fact that I know my old DVD is not going to look good on my current TV, because you get those like pixelated things, and so I was like, it's on Blu-ray. Okay, I'll watch it again. And I think it's definitely, and also it's like I said at the beginning, this like Angela Mao's martial arts performances are so good, and so just like having a chance to see her in this kind of role where she's using all kinds of weaponry, and she's also using but substantial amount of kicks and unarmed stuff. Her spinning kicks are always really perfect, and so I just like watching her in movies like this or Lady Whirlwind or Hapkido. At some point, we'll probably have to do some more Angela Mao movies.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think Eureka might have Hapkido.
They have. I saw they have a couple of Angela Mao movies up on there. And if they
I'd like to see more from her, because she's got a fantastic performance overall, physical as far as the acting goes. Really,
I want to pick up Hapkido whether we review it or not, just based on watching this. I'm like,
Hapkido, and I believe on the Wuxia Weekend podcast we must have done Hapkido at some point. I could be wrong, but Hapkido is great. Also, Sammo Hung is in this movie. I don't know if you guys caught that, but he's also in movies with her. Like I think he's in Hapkido. I'm pretty sure. And I believe he was in When Taekwondo Strikes, but I have to double check that. When Taekwondo Strikes is one of those movies where my version looks like a really grainy 70s movie. Like it really, like you can see like the sunlight going through the film, kind of grainy.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's really bad. But I think that I might have seen that they've restored it. So if they have, that would be a good one to watch because that if I remember, I think that's set in Korea, and it's one of the there's not that many movies that are built around Taekwondo and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting entry into martial arts, and Hapkido is obviously based on Hapkido. And that's
What?
actually, huh?
What?
Yeah, surprising.
Really misled me with the title there.
Hapkido had this like moment in the sun with like Hapkido and Game of Death, and then it's like it doesn't really have I don't know, but it's an interesting art because it's kind of like it's a little bit like Taekwondo, but it's got like grappling and judo stuff in it. So it's a really interesting to watch on screen. Yeah, so I don't know. Any other thoughts on this before we
I had one like kind of concluding thought. This is kind of a light movie. Like a lot of movies that are really grand classics of the wuxia genre. Come Drink with Me comes to mind, but like Golden Swallow, blah blah blah. Like they have a heaviness to them where like there's something like weighty that kind of makes it hard to rewatch it. Even if you love it, it's like, well, I've seen it. It's had its impact on me, and I can kind of move on to the next film. This one isn't like that. This one's very light. The revenge stuff is it's weird that something that has the exact same, like, really deep, emotionally scarring backstory that Lady Snowblood had managed to come off in such a rewatchable way, where it's like, yeah, okay, it's just 10 minutes, and then we have fun.
It is a Golden Harvest movie too, so that might be part of it. I have to admit, whenever I hear that Golden Harvest logo, like something goes off in my brain where I get really excited. But Golden Harvest movies, they're different than Shaw Brothers movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of them, like, they do have more of that like wide range of tone. And so I mean, not that Shaw Brothers don't either, but I feel like some of the Golden Harvest ones, they like, some of those like Polly Shan Kwan movies and stuff are really all over the map in terms of tone. So here this definitely does have a lighter feel. I think though, like you said, it works in its favor. It's
yeah, absolutely. This is one that like I'm not gonna have any reason emotionally to be like, well, I can put that off. Like it's like, no, I'll just watch it again. Let's put it on the background. Whatever.
Yeah. As someone that already owns Lady Snowblood, it's I don't feel like I bought the same movie twice.
Yeah.
They are just very different movies.
Well, and Lady Snowblood's one you kind of gotta inhale a little bit before you watch that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
I know.
That's why I meant to watch it this morning, but I got busy with something else. But it's like I only waited till this morning because I'm like, I know this is going to be intense.
I could not summon the emotional strength to rewatch this movie.
It's just more. It's a crueler movie. That's the only way I can put it.
It is cruel. I mean, that's part of its appeal. But again, there's still a gauntlet that you have to kind of deal with emotionally to watch this movie.
Yeah. But yeah. So I guess we'll head out, and I might have if I manage to watch the extended version, I might do a late night review of it just to clarify what the differences are. But it looks like we might have identified what the big ones could be. But that should be interesting.
I think it's 18 minutes longer, so there must be more.
Oh, really? 18?
I think I looked at it last night. I might be wrong on the time, but
it might be worth it to do another one.
I mean, 18 minutes is a lot. That's got to be way more than like a beating.
I could be wrong, so don't quote me on this. Was me looking at it very late last night, and I might be wrong, but.
Well, even 8 minutes in wuxia film time is an eternity.
Yeah, it's at least a notable amount of longer time. I remember being surprised.
The difference between an hour and 30-minute wuxia movie and an hour and 40-minute wuxia movie is night and day. Like it's unbelievable. I think this one was 140, the one that I saw, but I could be wrong. I wasn't really paying too close attention at the time.
I think it was about that. Yeah, it wasn't very long.
Yeah, it was. Decent, but not over, it gave them more room on the ending, it seemed. Also, they spent a lot of time at the beginning with the prison, so I think that
extra 10 minutes is that prison setup. That's what they took from Lady Snowblood.
Yeah. So, all right, we will head out, and until next time, we will talk to you later.